Welcome to Desi Return Diaries, Embracing Home Again, the podcast that shares personal journeys and expert insights on returning to India. I'm your host, Avinash Pedi, here to guide and inspire you on your Desi return journey. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Desi Return. For today's guest, we have Jaswanth, who has lived in US for 24 years before moving back to India. And I'm really excited to understand his story, get insights, what motivated him to move, and how has his life been since he moved back to India. With that, welcome Jaswanth to the show.
Hey, Avinash, thanks for having me on your show. This is a great videos that you're doing that is actually motivating a lot of folks, right? Sharing experiences. I'm happy you chose me. So hopefully I can share a few insights of what I have that drove me here. So to give you a little background.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So maybe you can start with a bit of your background and what are the trigger points that made you to decide to move back to India?
Absolutely. So we're a family of four, me, my wife, and my two kids. And my journey to US started about 24 years ago after undergraduate, finishing in Gulbarga. Went to US to do my master's. Post-master's, I was going to come back, but then I decided I'll stay for a little longer, and it became 24 years after that. That being said, my parents at that point of time were living in Africa. I did grow up as a kid in Africa too. So we had, I mean, personally, I felt most of the family was outside the US with all my cousins and everybody. So that was definitely another driving factor for me to go to the US. And I worked, and I didn't work in too many firms. I looked for a very stable environment generally. I started off in a small startup in the US, which eventually went bust after 10 years, but we went through a lot of different funding rounds with different companies. And then I joined Comcast. And then eventually I came down to India, and Comcast has been a great environment for me when I started working. I had the amazing team. And then I shared with them my circumstances, why I want to go to India. There were a lot of family reasons that was driving it, and they're okay with it. And I'm currently no longer with Comcast. I decided to throw in my hat for now, and then eventually explore local opportunities over here in Hyderabad now. So
that's great. So I think you kind of touched about few things. So are your parents still in Africa or in India?
No, post Africa, my parents actually came down to the US, and then my dad retired in Botswana, and eventually decided retirement was not for him. Picked up another gig with Baltimore Airports, and he was their electrical engineer, pretty much driving all their power utilization for the whole airport. He did that for 10 years, retired. They live with us in the US with my sister, and now my dad's living with us in India. And my mom passed away in the US.
Got it.
And if you look at my dad and myself together, my dad looks much younger than me, much fit, and he's a free bird. He just came back from doing the Char Dham trip 2 weeks ago.
Wow, nice.
So that tells you a lot about what he is in terms of his agility and his age.
And that's great. Cool. So sounds like I think it's the family and also like the passion to try different things when moved to India. So what's the actual trigger point? I know you had this thought always in your mind, even after doing the masters, and time flew by, and then it's 24 years. But is there some trigger point that made the decision? Yeah, this is the time that we have to move back.
Yes, I think so. Right before COVID, I think we were seriously evaluating coming back to India. But then when COVID hit, I think things collapsed for us. We just locked ourselves in a room for 2 years and lost track of time. But at the same time, kids were growing up, right? So I have a teenager at 14 and 10. So 2 kids, boys, getting into middle school post-COVID. So it is like, okay, if I don't go now, once I get into middle school completely and get to high school, it's going to be very difficult for me to make the journey back, right? And it's unfair for the kids too, because once you've given them so much out there, So we kind of agreed as a family that we'll give it a try for a couple of years in India, and see how it goes, and then make that final decision of permanently being back in India. And there's another driving factor. So my wife's family, mom and dad live back in India, and they have two kids, my wife and her sister. And my mother-in-law has niece challenges, and she wanted to get her surgery done. So it's not just one knee; it's both the knees at the same time. So we wanted to make sure we are here for her, give her support, help rehabilitate her, and get it going. So my wife was there for her mom, so that was one of the driving reasons. And then in terms of my dad, he was flexible. He's like, wherever you are, let me know. I can always travel as long as I travel, and then I'll settle down with you. So he stayed back in the US for another 6 months to make sure he gave us room to be able to settle down in Hyderabad. Once he saw that we're settled down, he moved back from the US, joined us. And now every 6 months or so, he'll make a visit back to see my sister. We're all well connected, so that's pretty helpful.
So sounds great. So sounds like I think it's the age of the kids and and the need for some help with the family members back in India. I think made the
Yes.
decision to move back. So and also I think you mentioned that you moved as an internal transfer with Comcast. Is that right?
It's not a transfer. So I got an exception working with them, saying because of my family reasons for some time, right? But eventually the company does not allow international work for too long, right? So when that point of time came in where they wouldn't allow that anymore, unless I transfer back to their local office in Chennai, which I was not keen on doing because that's in Chennai and Hyderabad. It would, and I have a lot of things that I wanted to be doing in Hyderabad to help the family restructure their finances and all that stuff. So based on that, we decided it made sense for me to call it quits. But I think if I were to go back, I'll definitely explore Comcast as my first choice because I've had a fabulous team, and we all as a team we've great management as well as my team that reported to me also was we've been like a family together for 10+ years. So
Okay.
that's an amazing, yeah.
So I think now that when you made a decision, since because you have lived in US for almost 24 years and it's a big move, maybe is there anything that you want to explain or provide some insights in terms of the actual physical move, some of the logistics, anything that you want to highlight, and also anything that you can suggest for the future aspirants, maybe from your move, like, are there something that you can suggest to them?
Absolutely. I mean, I think so. The first things first, I would encourage everybody who's thinking about coming to India to join one of the Return to India groups or Written Abroad groups. There are a lot of discussion boards out there. Like find a community online, right, with similar mind folks. That's super helpful, right? Second thing is have a hard look at your finances, right? That's a key thing. I think when we originally took a spreadsheet 2 years ago and said, okay, what does it cost to live in Hyderabad? I think inflation in Hyderabad, people say it's about 8% or 9%, but I think realistically, when you put these maths, it's about 25% sometimes. So, but I mean, I think it all depends on what your expectations in life are, right? So I was at a point living quite luxuriously in the US. So one of my goal was to not to overly compromise, but still find a middle ground somewhere, right? So that's one of the reasons I think it delayed us such a long time, 20+ years, trying to build those finances to be able to come and live over here, right? And the second thing is uh, try to move. Like I think again, I said join the communities first, move into a like-minded. I think moving into a like-minded neighborhood is super helpful, right? So for us, um, we first looked at an apartment complex in the downtown area because we liked it. But then we said okay, but then we gave the choice to kids to school and said, where do you want to go to school? So we explored all the international schools, did a drive for a week in Hyderabad, like 6 months before we actually made the move, right? So we came down, visited all the schools. Kids didn't really like all the schools. There's one school that sort of fell at the borderline, and only one kid liked it. And we kind of said, okay, no, both kids have to go to the same school. So eventually we narrowed it out as Indus, and because Indus is in off the city limits in Mokila, right? And my father-in-law, my in-laws live in Vijayanagara Colony, which is like in a traffic nightmare hub just past Medipatnam. So we wanted to find a middle ground somewhere that's equidistant from the school to as well as where it is. So we picked Gandipet as an area and started looking for an area, um, place to live. And then eventually we did some research, found a neighborhood which had about 20 to 30% of expats like us, because that's helpful. Because I think when kids come in completely into a new neighborhood with no expats, they'll struggle. I mean, they struggle even now with 20%, 30% expats, but I think just in their perspective, having a very like-minded community will be helpful. It also helps with when you go walk around the community, right? You meet people similarly who's just come back from the US or going to US or have some connections with the US. You still feel bonded. Same thing goes with my wife too. So I think even for her, just finding around, walking around, finding people, it's a little easier, right? Complete, or else because we do have a house in Secunderabad, where I grew up as a kid, right? And the original plan was to go there, but going there, that was a classic old neighborhood, which is a very old community. So going there, I think kids would have definitely struggled because they would have not find too many people who have returned from the US, right? Most of them have sent their kids to the US, but their kids have returned and living somewhere else. So that's why we wanted to live in a gated community. And I think that's one of the first things you should explore as, even though it's temporary, the transition during your transition time until you feel super comfortable, stay in a gated community, and then try to have relatives close by so you can always lean on them. Um,
Yeah, makes sense. So when did you actually move, and then when was the decision made?
So we made a decision, let's say in 2022 between COVID, right? And I think come January 2022, we said we're packing up and going, and we gave ourselves 6 months. Like actually, no, I mean I think 2021 is a core decision point. I would say we've sort of been talking for a while. We had mixed feelings, high emotions in the house, running back and forth. I mean it's not easy, but once we made that decision, we sort of decided, okay, we need to start cutting back a few things. So we put our primary residence on sale, uh, got it slightly and quickly got it renovated. And then once that was done, we decided just called in the movers and locked in the movers saying, this is the date we want to go. So far I've only been in India for about 14 months or 15 months roughly. So we came back last June, July timeframe. And that was a final move for us. So
Okay, great. And I think you kind of touched about this with the school. So just wondering like how the kids has been coping up with the school, adjusting, especially when you mentioned that in the teenagers getting into the middle school and so on. So just curious if there's anything that you can share on that aspect.
I mean, it's difficult. You can't meet every expectation, right? I think um, kids. So I mean, I think I've been fortunate that my younger one joined a class with an amazing class teacher. So his first year of journey was much better. So he's now in the 5th grade. But the elder one, also the school, what they did was they put all the expat kids into a single classroom. So it was fun. It was a fun ride for them as a kids. But I think now with the second year where things are a little more mixed, kids are. I mean, I mean, they always compare, saying it's better in the US in terms of education. So that's something that you cannot fully meet their requirements. So, but we have tried to give them enough comforts in all the way. Like even though we may not have it, we've ensured that they're a little busier with activities in terms of aftercare, sports, and playing outside. And we've definitely de-emphasized a little bit on education. We said, okay, we're not aiming for like a top 1%, 2%, or 3%. We want to make sure that you're self-competent and then you're able to go forward. So we're trying to give them a more holistic approach on education. So it's a journey. I would say compared to my first day to now, I've achieved 25% of success rate. There's still 75% to be done. And I think that's going to be a tough gap to fill.
Got it. So maybe in terms of, I know you mentioned it's been about 14 to 15 months. So how has the life or social life for you, for your wife? So anything that you can share, like, your expectations before the move and the reality. that, the things that you like and things that maybe, for people to consider before the move, so that could help them in their planning purpose?
So, I mean, it all depends, right? So I've definitely stayed quite disconnected from Hyderabad. Like we came in every other year to India, right? So my footprint in terms of, because all my first cousins live in the US. So in terms of that sense, we're slowly trying to find friends. I mean, I do have a few good friends back from college that are still in Hyderabad, and one of them moved back just like me a few years ahead of me. So he was an inspiring, that was an inspiration for us too. So, and then I think just finding friends in the neighborhood. I found a few friends in the neighborhood. Same with my wife. I think just because most of the college friends by now have all moved out to different countries. That everyone's gone somewhere. So I think that the social life is not 100% what we think it would be. There are gaps, but again, then I think we're trying to find friends within the R2I groups now, right? Who like-minded people. So I mean, if you look around, there's opportunities. The goal is you should be looking around, right? And second thing is time. With Hyderabad traffic, where people are scattered all over Hyderabad, you would assume that you would meet them once a week. I think it's just once every 3 months that you actually meet people. So that's one thing. And you get bogged down into a lot of micromanagement of labor in Hyderabad that just takes away half your day. Be it the maids, be it the drivers, be it your delivery guy, be it the Swiggy guy, Amazon guy, like all of these, the bar level of expectation in the US versus the bar level of expectation. It's a lot of convenient. You do a lot of ordering and stuff, but you have to manage that process. It's not like a smooth process. That takes up a lot of your time. So I think that's something, expectations need to be reset, right? I think people's value for time is very limited. People like, just like I think I'm part of the problem too, because sometimes I blow off things. But I think in general, I've seen that people don't understand the sense of urgency over here in Hyderabad. You tell them I need it by tomorrow, and you think it'll be done. And you go to tomorrow, it's like, oh no, it's not done yet. So you have to get used to that, right? You should start buffering some time around that. If you're not able to, if you can't manage that process, or you're not able to getting used to that sort of culture, then it's going to be very frustrating. And I think you'll explore packing your bags pretty quickly. And that's one thing I think needs to change overall. But overall, I think we have a lot of facilities in Hyderabad that are coming up, and I think it's a very growing city. So there's a lot of opportunities to be made, both socially as well as investment wise, or in terms of what you can do to improve the process too. So um, we just need to find a lot more people who are in the same boat and kind of do something different about it. So
Cool. And I think you kind of touched about a few things, which which is not like the nice, right? I mean, which are the things that you have to work through. These are the things that, part of the reality. Is there anything that you enjoyed, or like anything that went really well than your expectations? Before the move, you had certain expectations.
yes, I think so. I mean, I think just living. So I had a lot of apprehensions about living in a gated community, right? So um, I think living the housing situation, right? My neighbors, my community friends, like I think once you pick the right community, I think things will fall in place quickly, and I think that takes up half your burden. So I'm very happy that where I live, in the community where I live, amazing people, right? And every person is in brings their shares their own experience with you, so you do a lot of learning. So in the last 12 months plus, I've already learned a lot of things, right? And people are very helpful. You just need to ask, like, be upfront, saying, hey, I'm stuck over here, I need help. People will come and help you, right? That's one thing is great about Hyderabad, right? Even though I complain about slow processes, but if you seek out for assistance, a lot of people will reach out to you saying, how can I help you?
Got it.
That's one thing. And then in terms of like the service, I complained about service levels. You have to manage the service levels and stuff, but there's a lot of convenience in food delivery, man. That's amazing. The environment is great. I mean, I think this is like we have very apprehensive about school environment, right? The school, I think the teachers in the international school they have slowly leveled up. I mean, then like they're getting trained, they're getting a lot of training. I mean, there's a lot of new talent being recruited by the schools I've seen in the past 12 months. So there's a shift in the city to make things better, right? I think that's what I feel that's made me very comfortable, even though it's not really tangible, like saying, okay, this one thing made you better. But I think the holistic effort of a lot of people doing things to make things better, I feel is making my life easy.
Yeah, got it. I think switching gears a little bit, I think you kind of touched about this a little bit. Maybe, making sure that you have, look into your financials and making sure everything is good before the move, right? I don't know from your perspective if there's anything that you want to touch base on that, or give some insights for people who are considering to the move, like how they should approach it, for example. So anything that you can share, that would be great.
Sure. Again, going back to your other questions around the finances, right? Keep money for 2 years, right? Understand your expenses, what you need for 24 months, right? If you have done investments in Hyderabad, understand how liquid they are if you need cash. If you have not done any investments, try to have, you don't really need to buy a house. That's up to everybody's choice, but have enough finances that you'll cover all your basic facilities, your travel, your pleasure trips, your housing needs, your car needs, server needs, maid needs, and add, like, think about all the extremes that you will go to do in US. Account for 2 years worth of money on that.
Yeah.
So and then make that decision, right? If you don't have 2 minutes worth, because things are expensive. I mean, you could get hit pretty hard. I know if you go to a smaller town, right? And I'm very focused on Hyderabad, so cost of living is high in Hyderabad. Again, it depends on where you live in Hyderabad, right? You could live in the older part of the city where the rents are like 10, 15,000, or you can live in the western part of the city where the rents start from around 75,000 up north, right? Again, it's up to you what you want to spend, but whatever you want to spend, do your research saying, what does it cost? Where do I want to live? And then compute the finances and say, okay, do I have enough for 24 months, right? Even though you may think you're doing a lateral transfer and you're going to come down and work, right? Situations can change. If the recession hits, the first thing that happens is all the people who have transferred might get chopped, right? Depends on organization to organization. So you have to be ready for at least some time to give you some stability, right? And cost of education in India is expensive. Again, it's only expensive for the expats who are trying to move back because they want to give similar education lifestyle. So international school prices every year are going up by 10%. So if you've done your finances 2 years ago, redo them now, understand where the current pricing is. So having that amount is good. And if you've done
Completely echo.
investments, hmm.
Yeah, completely echo that. I think India is one place where you can see such a wide range of lifestyles that you can live, right? I mean, I think, as you said, even in a big metro like in Hyderabad, you can find a place where it's like 10,000 versus like 1 or 2 lakhs per month. And the same food, where you can get on one end, while also on the other end of the spectrum also. So depending on the lifestyle that you want to choose, make sure about your cost of living and ensure that your finances is sorted out before the move. And keep in mind the cost of living inflation is much much higher and different. Please
Yes.
check and look into that. Things are not same as it was 2 years back, so definitely do a reality check on that, especially before the move. uh, so Jashwant, is there anything that we haven't touched that you wanted to convey to the audience who are aspiring to move to India?
So I mean, I think the first thing is you need to answer the why question. Why do I want to move to India, right? If you're on the fence, right, it's nice to move to India because I have family. That is great, but you need to have a clear reason. Saying, because sometimes once I have a lot of friends who have moved and moved back to US, right? They've had similar reasons like me, but then you should have the clear why defined. Saying, if I'm going to India, right? Um, do I understand what the impact is, right? Maybe you're about to get promoted in the current job in the US, right? And if you go back to India, you're going to lose that. Are you okay to lose that, right? You should never regret saying, I came back to India and I lost my opportunities, right? So I think the why component, whether it's financial reasons or whether it's personal medical reasons or whether it's family reasons, the why part needs to be clearly defined, right? And the second thing is you should be able to adapt, right? And coming to India for 6 weeks during vacation time is much different than coming to India and living for 12 months. Like in six, usually what happens is when you come down for 6 weeks, everybody around you will take time for you. They'll come and visit you. They'll take you out for dinners. So life is very cruising every 6 weeks. So even though I've come in for so many years, right? Now, once you tell people that you're here for 12 months or more, right? They're like, okay, I'll meet you next year whenever I have time and you have time, right? So things like that, you have to get used to it, right? People time accommodation for you is diluted drastically as soon as they know you're here for a long period of time. That's one thing. And then in terms of um, medical facilities, you need to kind of set your expectations clearly, right? Because the culture is much different. Your medical insurances, even though you have insurances in Hyderabad, the volume of patients that you find in a clinic is 20x. So like in the US, if you go to a hospital, you might be in and out in a couple of hours, right? If it's a busy hospital. If you go to your doctors, you'll be out in 30 minutes. Whereas over here, you will go in and you never know when you come out, right? It could be like 6 hours, 8 hours, or 30 minutes, right? So that's something you have to account for. And second thing is you would not find the answers that you're looking for in your first try. So there is no holistic medicine. There's no general practitioner who will work with you and say, okay, let's do a physical. Let me review it. Over here, even though you get a physical in a big hospital like AIG, they'll send you to 20 different doctors, and every doctor will deal with a specific problem like cardiac and liver, like again, so you'll have to manage that whole process. So you should, I mean, so that's one challenge, but I think it's getting better though. I think the insurance policy defines a lot of frequent health checks now. So I think a lot of hospitals are recrafting their processes and packages more friendlier towards people, but it'll take time. But I think so. You need to kind of factor that in because I think we struggle to find a doctors. I think even today you ask me, can you give me a referral? I'll struggle to give you any referral because I'm still looking for that nice doctor that I can reach out on the phone and say, hey, I got a problem. Can you help me? So
yeah, it just takes time to settle, and especially when you lived in a different country for 24 years and then you're starting almost fresh, right? I mean, I think it just takes time to create your own you know your accountant, CPAs, your doctors, all these aspects. It just takes time to settle in. Yeah. Cool, Jashwant. So thank you very much for taking the time and sharing your insights, especially your journey and how the things have been here since you moved and how the kids has been adjusting. So really appreciate you taking the time and talking to us today.
thanks, Avinash. I think you're doing a great, fabulous by recording these videos and sharing them online to your subscribers. I think one shout out is to the whole family, right? I think the journey is not a single person. The journey is a family. So I think if my family didn't support us, right, I think it's a collective decision, but everybody is a stakeholder in that decision. I think I know kids have a say in it too, but I think you got to give more credit to the wife to be able to adapt because it's difficult for them perspective too. So I would give a shout out to my whole family for moving along to India with us. So yeah.
Completely agree. It's not. It's a mutual decision, and everybody has to be on the same page.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
You too. Take care.
Thank you all for joining us on this insightful journey of Desi Return. If you enjoyed this episode and want to explore more stories and expert advice, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Don't forget to leave a comment below with your thoughts and experiences. By the way, check out the links in the description below for our Facebook group and social media for updates and engaging discussions as well as connecting with fellow Desi Returners. Thank you once again, and until next time, may your Desi Return journey be filled with joy, growth, and endless possibilities.